Okay, great. So now that we've talked about menus in Shopify, let's move on to our next step in our setup walkthrough. So again, upper left, home, and let's scroll down. All right, so now that we've organized our navigation, we are now at the fifth step, which is adding a domain. So let's just quickly talk about this in case you don't know. But if you've ever worked with websites before, you probably know what a domain is. A domain is basically your website's URL, right? So like google.com is a domain, right? And so therefore, this is the name of your website. Domains can be .com, .net, .org, any of those, .shop even. So your domain, when we're now on the Shopify free trial and free plan, will be a subdomain, right? So as you can see, our domain is johns-sample-store.myshopify.com. This is called a subdomain because this domain has two parts. It has my store's name, John's Sample Store, and then the Shopify, second half, my Shopify. So this is called a subdomain. But let's say I wanted to remove the my Shopify from my domain and just keep it as johns-sample-store.com. Well, then that would be changing the domain from a subdomain to a full regular domain. But if I am going to do this, of course, I must upgrade on Shopify, or if I have a domain hosted on another, web domain platform like a GoDaddy and so forth, then I can link that domain to Shopify. So there's a variety of ways to go about this. But the point is that if you're just starting off with Shopify, you obviously don't necessarily need this. This is for when you are certain that you're going to be using Shopify full time, or of course have a domain already, registered on another platform, right? And so let's take a look at this. Let's click Add Domain. All right, so as we can see here, we have our subdomain here, johnsamplestore.myshopify.com. It is connected. So that means that this is our linked domain right now. So if I were to go here, it will take us to our store. But of course, like I mentioned earlier, we have a variety of options. We can connect an existing domain, as in if you have a domain that you already purchased on another platform, you can connect that to Shopify. You can also transfer a domain to Shopify. Same thing if you have, let's say, a domain purchased on GoDaddy that you want to transfer to, Shopify, you can do that here as well. Or lastly, you can buy a new domain and directly use it with Shopify. So you don't have to transfer anything or link anything at all. So this is, of course, completely up to you, right? It can get very technical when we reach this step, so we're not going to go too deep into it because at the end of the day, this is just Shopify for beginners, right? But let's just quickly talk about some of these options that we have here. So if we click Connect Existing Domain, we obviously have the ability to type in the domain that we already have purchased on whatever, domain seller online, such as GoDaddy and so forth, and then click next, and you'll be taken to the process and of the process of transferring a domain, basically, or connecting a domain to that third-party host outside of Shopify. Definitely you can do that. You can connect, or if you don't want to connect, you can transfer it to Shopify, right? So transfer the domain from that third-party domain host or vendor and transfer it to Shopify instead of connecting it, if you prefer, right? And then lastly, you can obviously buy a domain directly here on Shopify, and if it is available, you can definitely purchase it. So let's say I want to just change it from johns-samplestore-myshopify.com to just johns-sample-store. So as you can see here, we have a list of different domain types, .com, .net, .org, .store with a variety of prices. Okay, so we can see that johns-sample-store.com is available to purchase for $14 a year. And if I click buy here, I will be taken to, the process of purchasing this for my Shopify store. So I would have to add a payment method, and I would have to go through all of these steps to add that domain to my store. We're going to skip this for the sake of this course right now since we're just starting off, but just know that this is how this can work, right? So if you're tired of having that myshopify.com subdomain to your web store, know that you can prevent that definitely by either connecting a domain that you purchased already, transferring that domain that you purchased already, or purchasing a domain directly on Shopify. And of course, domains, depend on their availability. So perhaps the domain for your business might already be taken, right? That's why you have the option of, instead of choosing .com, you can have .net or .shop, right? Whatever you prefer. But that's pretty much it when it comes to domains on Shopify. We also have here the change primary domain option. This is just if you have a variety of different domain names, right? You can definitely choose from more than one, but you can only choose one at a time. So that's also something to talk about. But what you can do though is have redirecting. So how domain redirecting works, or redirection works in Shopify and in general, is, let's say I have a variety of domains that I want to direct to my web store, right? So let's say I have, johns-sample-store.com, and then I have johns-sample-store.net, and so forth, right? And let's say I want all of those to direct to johns-sample-store.com, no matter if it's .net or whatever else. I can redirect all of those other domains that I purchased to my web store, right? So even if I have a variety of domains, I can cause those to redirect and point to my one web store main domain, which is johns-sample-store.com. So that's basically domain redirecting, and you can enable this in Shopify if you have more than one domain that you want to point to your business. But apart from this, this is pretty much it for domains in Shopify.